taking your time to join us today. And most importantly, we would like to thank the Faculty of Education team for their effort in preparing and giving this presentation. And before I hand over to the Faculty of Education, I would like to go over some housekeeping rules and some important information. And so for the housekeeping rules, if you do have questions during the presentation, please raise your hand if you would like to speak, or you can type the question in the chat box. I will then indicate to the presenter to address the question. And as mentioned, the session is being recorded and the presentation slides will be requested from our presenters, and both of these will be uploaded on our Moodle communities by the end of this week. And a feedback survey will be sent out during the session on the chat box, and we would like for you to please complete the feedback survey for us to gain some insight on whether this workshop was useful and how we can improve in the future, as well as to provide some kind words to our facilitators for their hard work. And the survey will also be used for the facilitators and RCD reporting. And also, by filling out the survey, this ensures that you receive a certificate of attendance. So without further ado, I will hand over to the Faculty of Education to proceed with the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, students and colleagues. My name is Dr. Khadija Petka. I'll do the presentation on behalf of the Faculty Administration team, and I will, in some instances, call some staff in to respond to some questions at the latter part of the presentation if needed. I'm going to do the presentation and then I'll leave questions to the end, and I will then flip back to some slides if the question is relative to a particular slide. So just to switch around the request earlier that you raise your hand when you have a question immediately. If you could please just let me complete the slides and then I'll take questions at the end, please. Okay. So just an indication of who our team is. I do have some pictures for you. Obviously, all the pictures that you see are not all the staff members that will be dealing with the master's and doctoral students. I just included my entire team that works directly with me and all of the students within our faculty administration. There are a select group of staff in this set of pictures that work specifically with master's and doctoral students. I will make a slide available. It's not going to be in this presentation, but I'll include it to give you an indication of who the staff members are that you must direct your inquiry to, dependent on the qualification code that you are registered for. Anything related to administration that you may find necessary to direct a query on, I will have a slide included there for you as well. Another slide that would have additional pictures is the Executive Dean's Secretary. She's no longer acting now. She's in a permanent position. Our Marketing Officer, and then Manit Rademayer, who is the lady that you will, that's not an email address to direct this to, but I'll also include a slide for a specific email addresses that you must direct various queries to. So Manette would be important for you to know if you want to have questions about the supervisor linked bursary that you would be allocated dependent on the requirements if you have completed the relevant forms for applying for such a supervisor linked bursary. And then the Bianca De Jager would be the person that you would go to if you have a big complaint that you need to take to the dean, and we're hoping that you don't get there, that we are able to assist you prior to having to take your query to Bianca De Jager. But those are the people that you would direct certain specific queries to. Our staff within the faculty administration are based on 2 campuses, the Soweto campus at the Robert Sobukwe building and the APK Bearing 3 campus building. Now, if you want to consult with the staff, it's best to set an appointment because we do have various meetings happening and staff also have to be off-site at specific times. They may be not in the office when you arrive. It is ideal that you make an appointment to see the staff member. Alternatively, you can request to have an MS Teams meeting with them. So, understandably, if you do arrive and you are on campus and you want to see someone, you're welcome to come to the office to find out if they are available, or ask one of the other staff if they are not, to assist you. That's also acceptable. But if you really have a specific query that you need addressed, it's good to set an appointment. The staff, if they are not available, at times they're also working remotely. So it would be useful for you to do the appointment system, and that's the appeal that we have at this stage. So the presentation that I'm going to have throughout the session is going to be talking about the student life cycle of a master's and doctoral student. Our team specifically focuses on marketing. I don't do the marketing myself. We do have a marketing officer, as we have as the previous slide indicated. My team works specifically with admissions, register applications, admissions, registrations. We monitor your academic progress, and we also assist with graduation and assist with some alumni related matters. The marketing, I just have some pictures of three of our brochures that we do have available for doctoral and master's students. There are others because we do have coursework master's qualifications that are also on offer in an online platform, and one for educational psychology. But the online platform information is not here. It's not really relevant at this stage. Now, what is important for you to understand about the monitoring of our student life cycle? The slide presents to you what a proof of registration would look like. So the image on the top right-hand corner has an indication of what a proof of registration looks like. So when you are looking at your proof of registration, you're not looking at the date it is generated, because that's the date that you are requesting for the proof of registration. That will be the generated date. What you need to check to ensure that you are registered for a qualification is the registration period, and that will tell you in which academic year you are registered for. If you are not registered for 2025, you need to reach out to the faculty to ensure that you are registered correctly. You also need to be registered for a set of modules in the qualification. In this instance, the student is registered for a minor dissertation, so they have a series of modules that they are registered for. If you are registered for a doctoral qualification, you will generally only have two modules, a first semester module and a second semester module. If you are registered for a master's research dissertation qualification, the same applies. You are registered for a first semester module and a second semester module. If you see on your registration, proof of registration, you only have a module, you need to just query that with us, because it might mean that you are missing a module that you need to be registered for. Now, module marks are not allocated it depends. The marks will be allocated, or the results will be allocated against a module, but also now the staff within the team are working on registration globals. So they will also be checking on the end that you are registered correctly for two modules, if it is that you are a doctoral student or you are a master's student. Depending on the type of master's you are doing, they will check that you have the correct registration. And it would be useful also on your side that you check, so you can also touch base with them if you see at a certain point by next week, my modules are not reflecting. I just want to be sure that I'm registered correctly for the modules that I need to be registered for. That's your document, and you will also use your proof of registration to share with your supervisor that you are a registered student, because a supervisor cannot supervise a student unless they are registered with the University of Johannesburg. The supervisors will also use a tracking document, which is the image on the bottom right-hand corner, which is registered active students. Now, of course, we didn't include the names of the students or the details of the students, but this is just a screenshot of a document that we use to track to see all our students that are registered in a particular academic year. So the HODs and the supervisors can also go and check that the students that they are supervising are in fact registered. But the supervisor will also ask you for your proof of registration. Some supervisors don't necessarily only use the registered list. They also will ask you for your proof of registration. So ensure that you share that with your supervisor as well. On the left-hand side, top left, is what we refer to as a global statement. It is a progress report that we use in academic administration to ensure, to monitor the student's progress. So when I said earlier that we're monitoring progress of a student, every year we have registration at the beginning of the year or even in the second semester. So we're always monitoring registration progress reports or global reports. We also monitor examination on the global report. So we will see at a specific time at the end of the first semester, we will allocate a global result code, or it will be for either on a module, or it will be a global result code. It will be a result code on a module, depending on what the marks are. If it's a master's minor dissertation, if it's a doctoral, you will get a proceed to the following with no credit. As you will see in this example, it's a proceed no credit because that student, as this example is reflecting, is that the student obviously didn't complete the thesis in 2018, didn't complete the thesis in 2019. Obviously, this is a very dated global, but it was just used as an example. In the following year, when the student does complete, it will have graduation, a potential graduate if the study is still under assessment, or if not, the study will then be concluded and it will show that the student is a graduate on the global result uh, document. Now, this document we don't share with the students. It is something that is monitored within our team in administration, and it is also used by the HODs or the deans, etc., to look at specific cases, because further on to the second pages of the document, which I obviously haven't included, we normally have notes if students have requested for extension of studies or other notes if needed, or abeyances, etc., dependent on various things like that, that would also be reflected. So basically your history of your life cycle is everything is contained in the global report that we are monitoring on a regular basis within administration. Now, important for you to note is when you are registered, there are three categories that you need to pay attention to. The time to completion is very important. From the moment you are registered, your time to completion, the faculty and the institution is now looking at students completing in minimum time for the qualification. So the ideal is that you complete in the minimum time. There is a maximum time allowed as well. The minimum time for a master's degree is 1 academic year, and for a doctoral degree is 2 academic years, irrespective whether you part-time or full-time. So every student should be aiming to complete in the minimum time. The maximum time, as is noted, for a master's part-time student registered part-time is 36 months, full-time 24 months, doctoral part-time 60 months, and full-time 48 months. So it's calculated from the date you register, the month in which you register for the first time for the qualification. And then the months come, obviously your maximum time is counted toward that. Now, important to note is that your maximum time doesn't mean that in the maximum time, that is you must now only work towards completing in the at the end of your study, when you're coming to maybe the last 6 months of your maximum time, you now say, oh no, I'm not going to finish in time, I want an extension. Your aim should be that you are working toward completing in the minimum time for the period that you are registered, either master's or doctoral. You must aim to complete in the minimum time, If you are going to work toward the maximum time, you must understand that that is the time, that is the extension that is already granted to you to complete the qualification. If there are students that there's medical reasons or some tragedy happens in the family, not a work related matter. A tragedy happens in the family or is there's a medical reason. There are extreme cases such as those where an extension of studies will be granted. Extension of studies would go over the maximum time to completion. We do also allow for students to go into pre-registration. The pre-registration does not get counted toward the time to completion. Pre-registration is normally a 6-month period. It is not a formal subsidized qualification. It's more for students, yes, they have to be registered to work with a supervisor, but it's more a sort of a pause period for the student to do the proposal for the study, as well as the ethics proposal for the study, and for the student to see, am I going to cope? Will this fit for me? Will the supervisor fit for me? Will the supervisor also has an opportunity to see if the student is capable of managing the qualification if being registered in the formal qualification? Now, if you are in this meeting, it means that you are already registered for the formal qualification. The assumption is that the postgraduate school would have invited you because you are a registered student. Once you have done pre-registration, and if there's a question on pre-registration, I can answer that at the latter part of the presentation. But students do have pre-registration options to go into. The pre-registration doesn't get counted toward the time to completion. It is a 6-month period and on an average of 6 months. And in this time, nothing is serving at the Faculty Higher Degrees Committee or the Faculty Ethics Committee. Only once a student is registered for the formal qualification is the student's proposal and ethics proposal for the study and proposal for the ethics part of the study submitted at the various committees for approval or for noting. Once the student is in the formal qualification, you would have noticed that we sent several reminders to students, please register, spaces are limited, etc. So registration is also dependent on space. So irrespective whether a student is admitted, you have a letter that shows that you have been admitted, etc. A student must still register within the given time. That means that even next year and the years to come, dependent on how long you are going to take to complete your study that you are registered for, part-time or full-time, you have to register in January every year. And you must ensure that you, even if you are a continuing student, it is possible that there may not be space for you to register in a particular academic year. So you must ensure to have your registration fees handy, available at the start of the year to pay the registration fee to register so that you are not missing out on your supervision time. The supervisor in the period of the registration will work with you on your supervision. It is also a time where your proposals can serve, which is your proposal for the study and your ethics proposal. And it's also in the registration period, over the period of time, it depends. You may also have your assessments done in that time, which is your minor dissertation, your dissertation or your thesis by article. And then your results will also have to be captured in the time that you are registered. So for a master's and doctoral student, you can work from a period of 1 year to a period in a doctoral for 48 months, for 60 months in part-time, and 48 months in a doctoral for full-time, masters up to the end of the 36 and the 24 months part-time, full-time dependent. So this is the important aspects to note when it comes to the registration and the time to completion. In relation to your supervision, there's two parties that are important here. Of course, we monitoring like in the back end when it comes to supervision. Administration does not get involved here. The only part that we really have to be paying careful attention to is that the student is the supervisor is providing the information, like for example, let me go through the supervisor's role and the student's role, and then I'll explain where administration overlaps and comes in here, and we get involved in specific areas within this journey of the supervision. The supervisor is supposed to advise, supervise, and guide the student with regard to the study that they are involved in, provide timeous feedback to the student, ensure that the student's progress reports are completed and signed. So I'll talk a bit about the progress report that you will have to share with your supervisor. The supervisor must also guide you in your proposal preparation for the study of your proposal for your study, as well as your ethics proposal. The supervisor is also responsible to submit all the documents that the faculty higher degrees requires for approval, documents such as nomination of assessors, your proposal titles, your supervisor details. If there's an extension of studies to be submitted, for example, the supervisor is responsible to do that. But you also, as a student, need to keep your supervisor in check, much as the supervisor is supposed to keep you in check in that regard. The supervisor also has to assist the student in finalizing the study, obviously not do it for you, but guide you in finalizing your study, guide you with your assessment process, tell you what needs to be done here and there, and so forth. And in this instance, can direct you to faculty administration to say, I need you to just guide my student, what is the process? But I'll talk to the next slides that follow. I will talk to the assessment process shortly. The supervisor is also meant to guide the student after the results are returned, as well as in a for doctoral students is to guide students for doctoral seminars, as well as the oral defense that the doctoral student has to do prior to the finalization of results. There is also a requirement that a student has to have research output in various forms. It can be either a published article, articles that are in manuscript, sorry, my manuscript form, not yet in article form, also something in draft, but your supervisor will guide you in that respect, because you have to also have that submitted in order for your results to be finalized. The student's role, on the other hand, is to follow the guidance of the supervisor, provide feedback timeously to the supervisor when the supervisor has requested it. I would recommend that the student also has, for yourself, you work with your supervisor to work out the timeline. Where do you see how much you've going? What milestones will you have at a certain time, and keep to that guide. You also need to guide your supervisor, because the supervisor has many other students that they're monitoring. So if you want to be finishing your study at a faster pace, I would recommend that you discuss that with your supervisor and work on milestones, and then also keep track with yourself, not just expect your supervisor to be keeping track of you with your progress. If your supervisor does not give you progress, you need to touch base with your supervisor, communicate with your supervisor, etc., and ensure that you are keeping on track with your studies to complete to the time when you are aiming to complete your study at that whichever time that will be. The student is also supposed to prepare the study proposal, the ethics proposal. If it's a doctoral student, it's your responsibility to prepare your doctoral seminars and your oral defense as well. It's the student's responsibility to finalize the study and adhere to the assessment processes that are set in place by the faculty administration, and also listen to the guidelines that the supervisor has set out for you. You also have to, as I indicated, prepare the research output requirement, and then, of course, submit your final thesis, dissertation, minor dissertation for submission to the library. But the process is outlined also clearly in further slides that come. Now, this slide I just thought to include to let you know that your supervisors have access to these folders where all the templates are needed, such as one example on the right is an application for an extension or an abeyance of study. You'll see a series of folders that have different items where students can request of their supervisor, if it is that you need a change of title, you can either ask your supervisor to assist you to retrieve that document, or we will be also be making it available to our students, where they are able to access the documents, because in any case, all of these documents that you see are available, the supervisors have to submit the documents to the Faculty Higher Degrees Committee for either noting or approval. So these documents are not what you will be submitting, it's what your supervisor will be submitting. However, you will be working with your supervisor to complete some sections of the documents. So for example, if you are going to be requesting for an extension of studies, you will be providing your supervisor with the relevant evidence that has to go with us in support of the application that your supervisor will submit to the Faculty Higher Degrees for approval. You'll notice that we have an affidavit, a library submissions form. Once you finalize your study, you will submit to your supervisor a document that also is evidence that you are agreeing for the library to make to have your digital copy available to the general public. If there's an appeal that will come, I will also talk through that later, but there's various documents that the supervisor has access to that can be shared with you where needed, but the supervisor will have to get it back to submit to the relevant committee where this has to serve. The assessment process, there's a document. Now, I just did a print screen of the document, but I can share that with the postgraduate school. They can put it up in their platform that they use to share information with you. But we'll also be sending this document out to all the students so that you are able to see what are the steps you need to follow when you are submitting for examination. Important to note that there are 2 dates in a year, the 31st of May or the 31st of October is when students must be submitting for examination. That means you are submitting your minor dissertation, or you are submitting your dissertation for your master's, or you are submitting your thesis, general thesis, or you are submitting a thesis by article. But those are the dates generally. There are times that students maybe are going to submit at a different date, but in that regard, the supervisors normally engage with the faculty office to engage on a different date that they may want to be using another date that the student would want to submit in. There are specific rules around those dates because a student must be registered in order for an assessment to go out to an assessor. So if a student is not going to be registered at the beginning of January because they didn't submit at the end of October, the student will then have to be aware that they may have to register for the first semester or for the full academic year of the following year until the examination process is concluded. There's also a specific email address that we have in the faculty for examinations to be submitted. When I say examination, I'm talking about your thesis, your minor dissertation or your dissertation or your thesis by article. We only use this email address because this is a central place where we also engage with assessors, we engage with the students. We don't obviously give your results to you as a student. Whatever the results are from the assessors after your assessments that come back from them, we engage with the supervisor, and the supervisor will tell you what your results are, of course. And in the end, after everything is finalized and gone through the various sets of approvals, we then obviously communicate. I'll explain what happens thereafter. For doctoral studies, we normally have 3 assessors appointed, and one of them should at least be an international assessor. There are times where 3 international assessors are used. It also depends on the expertise and what field of study this is and where the expertise is. But there must always be an international assessor of the 3. The doctoral students, part of the assessment process is also an oral defense, where a student has to defend the study. You will meet with your 3 examiners and there'll be a non-assessing chair that will facilitate the discussion. Your supervisor will be present but will not be allowed to speak unless the chair allows for it. The supervisor is just an observer in the session, you presenting and you are answering the questions of the assessors. This is after the study has been examined, you get your results back, you see what your assessors have said, and we also schedule a specific session to talk our doctoral students through what to expect when there is an oral defense, what questions to look out for, what to prepare, etc. So we don't just send you into the oral defense blindly. We meet up with our students that are due for an oral defense ahead of time, and we guide them also through the process of what they need to look out for. The person that does that presentation is our Vice Dean Research Postgraduate Studies. She will talk all our doctoral students through the oral defense process when they are closer to the time where they need to prepare for that. Master students, you normally for RD masters, we have 2 assessors appointed for contact programs. There are also online programs that we have in our master's qualifications. In that instance, they have 1 assessor and 1 moderator for each of their studies allocated. Now, this document on the right, the image that I just pasted there, like I said, we will share this with you so that you are aware of the processes that you need to follow for submitting for examination, and also what documentation you need to submit when you do submit for examination. When you do submit for examination, you will receive a congratulatory note like the one on the top right-hand corner in your email. And you will also, because in the past, what we did, students used to submit hard copies. And it was quite a big affair, you know, it was like such a lovely thing for you to be submitting a thesis or a dissertation, minor dissertation. It's a big step in a student's journey. And when they came into the offices in the old days prior to 2020, they would walk onto we would put out a red carpet for our students, and they would submit theirs, and everybody would be making a big fuss of the student because it's a big thing, you know. But now, because everything is moving to the digital platform, the only way we can do a red carpet for you is by sharing a congratulations note and giving you some indication of when to expect your results from your supervisor. It's we normally say between 8 and 11 weeks. Sometimes it comes faster, sometimes it takes a bit of time. It also depends on which assessor is submitting their information at which point. So you may get one assessor very quickly, and then in another 3 weeks, you might only hear from another assessor. You know, so it depends. So we give a time frame of between 8 and 11 weeks from the moment the student has submitted. Then one of the other things that is also in the document that we will send to you, and I've just put a print screen on the bottom right-hand side of the page of the slide, is what the student will have to have ready for the supervisor to have your results serve at the faculty higher degrees. You must have a final, your thesis or your dissertation or your minor dissertation must be finalized. The final copy must serve at the Faculty Higher Degrees Committee when your results serve. You must also have, if you are a doctoral student, a laudation, which is a short CV of 150 words and some sort of an abstract of your study, which your supervisor will read at graduation. But we also provide guidelines to the supervisors, and we can share that with you as well, of what exactly needs to be in that document so that you can prepare that, you know, once you've finalized all your things, these are the last minute bits of things that you have to do prior to submitting your results for approval at the faculty higher degrees, is for doctorals, a laudation, a CV, a short CV, and that gets included in the graduation program. And then, of course, your thesis or dissertation or minor dissertation is also submitted along with the reports, along with the supervisor, the corrections that you've made, if there were any corrections required by your assessors, a report from your supervisor, and then your research output evidence. As I indicated, it could be published work in accredited journal articles. It can be work in draft a manuscript in draft. It can also be conference proceedings that you may have presented with your supervisor at a conference. It may also be a chapter in a research book. So there's various things that your supervisor will speak to you about, but note that you have to have research output. Minor dissertation master students are not obligated to have the research output. It is preferred that they complete it, but it's not a requirement for the minor dissertation because they have coursework modules that they do. We do also have a master's, a doctoral online qualification. For that one, if there are students in the group today, we can talk to any questions that come for the research output evidence that's required. So in other words, in the old days, I'm calling old days 5 years ago, 2020, prior to about 2017, we were still collecting leather-bound copies from students of this study in hard copy, but we don't do that anymore. You can have that printed at the library yourself, and you know it's quite costly. So you can print for yourself and for your supervisor, but you don't have to submit anything to faculty administration. And the supervisors, the assessors sometimes only ask for the final copies to be emailed to them. So that's what we do as well. When it comes to an appeal and a complaint, you will find in some instances you might not be happy throughout your journey as a student. It might be that you didn't complete your study in time, you didn't submit a proposal in time, you haven't made sufficient progress. We will then indicate to you via this PGE appeals email address that you have to appeal because you've been academically excluded, or you will not be allowed to register the following academic year, or some communication will come to you that you haven't made sufficient progress and your supervisor is suggesting that we cancel your studies. You have the appeals route will also, obviously, the whole process will be outlined to you in a particular document of what you need to do. It also depends on the type of appeal you're going to be making. Are you going to be appealing because you have to be you haven't submitted a proposal by a specific date? That documentation will explain this is what you need to indicate in your appeal, why your proposal wasn't submitted, etc., to the faculty higher degrees. Or if you are over your time that you were committed to and you didn't request for an extension of study, there's an appeal also that you will, so each appeal is a little bit, one is different to the other. So each student will receive their individual email to say, this is the appeal that you need to apply for because of this reason you've been excluded. Now this is the appeal that you will need to complete the document. And a subcommittee is chaired by our Vice Dean, Research Postgraduate Studies of the Faculty Higher Degrees, and she normally will chair the session, and we look at all the documents that the student has submitted. If it's, for example, the appeal is accompanied by doctor's notes or medical reports or any other relevant documents, all that becomes very important, and it's important for you as a student to note that when you are appealing for any possible reason, you must include all the documents. Everything is confidential. That's why it's a subcommittee of the bigger committee. The subcommittee is normally the vice dean, myself, a member of my staff, the vice chair of the faculty higher degrees committee, and sometimes we call the supervisor in, or the HOD of the department. And it's a smaller group of people that look at the very intricacies of the case, and sometimes there's really confidential information that's included, and we don't want for all that information to be out there in the public. So students must also know that it's a safe environment for them to share information that would support their case of why they need to be allowed to come back again or not. Now, if there's a complaint, so that's the appeals process, the complaints process. If there's a complaint against the supervisor, we find students complaining, saying that the supervisor didn't supervise me well enough. And this is where I say you need to ensure that you complete an agreement with your supervisor, and you also have in writing the milestones that you and your supervisor are agreeing to, that you will follow, you'll complete the chapter 1 by this time, you'll complete chapter 2 by this time, etc. However your milestones are going to be worked out. It's important that you keep to that, students. If your supervisor, because we do find supervisors are also transgressing. If your supervisor transgresses and does not follow what you agreed to and isn't responding to you when you write to them, or hasn't responded after weeks of you submitting something to them and they were supposed to give you feedback, because it throws you off track as well. You also have to look out for your own interest as a student, because you are, firstly, you're paying a lot of money for the qualification, and it's your life that you have in your hands. So you have to keep your supervisor in check as well. And we find that some students, only when they come to the end of their study, do they want to complain about the supervisor, or if they themselves don't make enough progress, then they want to complain and they write to everybody and sundry. But as a student, I would recommend that you keep a log of all your requests, that you keep a little folder for yourself. So if you find at some point you're not happy with your supervisor, discuss it with your supervisor, which is a courteous thing to do. If that does not work, you then can talk to the HOD of the department for which you are registered in. The HOD will then discuss with the supervisor. If those two steps don't work, you can escalate it to the vice dean. And in most instances, the vice dean sorts the story out once and for all. It doesn't have to go to the dean, it doesn't have to go to the registrar. But when you get to step 3 of the supervision process complaint, you must have suitable evidence to show that you have discussed it with your or you've reached out to your supervisor, you've reached out to the HOD, the HOD still not done anything about it. There's evidence. And then the vice dean has valid reason to take it further. Otherwise, they're going to direct you back to the HOD. Um, if step 1, 2, and 3 has not worked out for you and you still see nothing is progressing, you can then only escalate to the dean. But again, when you get to the dean, you must have evidence that you followed step 1, 2, and 3. And if the dean is still not able to assist you and you're still not happy with the decision of the dean, she will then say to you, you can now take the matter to the registrar. And the registrar is the last stop. Of course, we can go higher than the registrar, but we want to avoid even getting to step 3. We want to try and sort everything out at step 2, but there are cases where it eventually escalates to the registrar. But the dean will normally say to you, I've tried all these routes, this is still not working. You are now, we're not going to allow A, B, or C. And if you're still not happy, you can then go to the registrar to appeal there. Of course, the registrar will come back to the dean. We have to then present all the evidence. So it's important that you keep a folder of your own complaints that you've been putting forward or whatever. So you have a paper trail of all the evidence. If it's an administration complaint, you first talk to your supervisor, because maybe it's something that the supervisor is not sorting out, submitting documents to the faculty higher degrees. For example, you did your proposal, you submitted it, everything is sorted, but you getting a notification from administration to say, you're going to be academically excluded because you didn't do your proposal. You can then go to your supervisor and say, I'm getting this. Why is my proposal not sent in yet? Because your supervisor has to submit the proposal for faculty higher degrees committee to note, or to your doctoral committee, depending on what you are studying. So that's your first stop. The second stop would be to complain to me. If it's something that my staff are doing, or it's something administrative, and it's something, for example, you weren't registered in time, or your modules are not showing correctly that you're supposed to be registered for, or you've done various things around. Finance is something that we can assist you with, but it's not in our domain, but we can assist as best we can, or direct you to the people at student finance that work with the finance matters. But you can escalate to me a complaint and we see how we can resolve it. If administration up to step 2 has not worked, you can then escalate to the vice dean, the dean, and the registrar, as I indicated in the previous process of escalating. One of the other things that you can also do, which I didn't indicate here, is After the supervisor, you can also talk to the faculty officer that's responsible for the qualification. So if you see they didn't register a module, you can talk to that person and say, I see that this module isn't registered, what's happening? And they can then fix it for you and your query can be resolved. If you see that they're still not working on what you requested them to do and it's 2 weeks have passed, you can then escalate it to me. So there are, prior to getting to me, you can discuss with your supervisor or the faculty officer, dependent, on what the complaint is the nature of the complaint. When it comes to graduation, after all the reason why I put the complaints and appeals in the previous slide is that happens somewhere in a student's journey where there's a complaint, but in the end, when you get to your assessment, it might be that your assessment is taking too long to come through. And you need to write a complaint about that. But I put that prior to graduation because there's some sort of complaint or some form of appeal that has to happen in not every journey of a student, but in some journeys of various students. Once we get to the point of graduation, once the Senate Higher Degrees Committee and the Faculty Higher Degrees Committee has approved that your results can be conferred, it is captured on our ITS system, which is a system we use to capture results and work with various things for the student life cycle. You will then receive some documentation from the faculty if needed to indicate that you've completed the qualification. You will also be able to access your academic record yourself to indicate that the qualification is obtained. The faculty does not send out graduation letters. That comes from a central office within the university. They will inform you of the date and the various forms of attire, etc., for the graduation. But the faculty administration can also tell you more or less when the graduation will take place, because we don't also know the dates in advance, well in advance. We only know it maybe about 3 months closer to the time when the graduation is going to be taking place, because they still have to look at all the university students that are going to be graduating, and then they place faculties in specific time slots. But the person that deals with graduations will normally be liaising with you, or your faculty officer allocated to you will also engage you if you need to ask questions about that. After the graduation ceremony, you can request for digital certificates at some point. We also regard you as an alumni of our institution. There are some alumni that want to travel abroad and go and work there. They then need documents from the university in the form of transcript supplements. For companies that may want that, they can also access digital degree certificates or check on this portal to see your your degree certificate and verify qualifications, etc., after the graduation. So we've got a digital certificate verification, qualification verification portal, where all this, as I explained, can be accessed by prospective employees, and also for you to request for transcript supplements if needed for future, and then of course also request for additional copies of your degree certificate if your original is gone missing. You can request for reprints, and that's basically what we offer the alumni of our institution. We work in a very small way with alumni when it comes to the transcript supplements, but the UJ does have a bigger alumni office that deals with more detailed packages, etc., that they offer to alumni and the services thereof. I'm going to stop there now and allow for questions. One thing before I move on to the questions, what I want to mention is that we are going to be doing a faculty-specific presentation to students on ethics, how to submit your ethics proposal, what you need to do with your ethics proposal, and so forth. So that's going to be a separate, there is a session that we're going to do with our students. It's not part of the session, but it's a session that we'll do with our students. We're going to invite them to a session to come and listen to a presentation on the ethics proposal process or the submission of the proposal and what that process entails. We will also reach out to our students to invite them to other sessions, like I said, such as the oral defense for doctoral students. If we have any other sessions that we plan, we will also invite our students to those and record those, and we could possibly make it available to the postgraduate school to include on their portal, but we'll also share it with our students in whichever sessions we choose to have with our students. We will do that as well. I'm going to open the floor up to questions if there are any. Please feel free to ask those questions if you have any questions now.
Thank you very much, Dr. Betka, for that insightful presentation. Yes, we do have a question on the chat from Lucky Sani.
Let me see what the question is. Sorry, I wasn't looking at the chat. I recently changed my surname and would like to update my details and obtain new certificates. What is the procedure and how much does it cost to get new certificates? Tandy, do you want to take that question, please?
Afternoon, colleagues and students. So, Dr. For surname changes, it has to be done with the biographics department at the Student Enrollment Center. The students, let me just get Monica's surname, sorry. Julia Kim. The students I will put the details in the chat. And then once the surname has changed, you can apply for a new certificate on the digital certificate platform. The last time I checked, I think it's $350 for a certificate reprint. So usually you would pay on the system, and then that goes through to the central certification office at the Student Enrollment Center, and they will do a reprint of the certificate for the student.
Okay, thank you. Does that answer the question that was posed? Masani, is that suitable? Is there a follow-up question that you have, perhaps? I don't think so. If you just give me a moment, I see that there's another question about the research output. I just want to get to a document that I could possibly also display. If you just give me a moment to find the document so that I could give you it is in the doctoral one. I'm not sure if the document is displaying. Please let me know. Is the document?
Yes, we can see the document.
Okay.
We can see the
document.
document.
The document is displaying the publications, research output, proof of research output for the doctoral studies. You'll see in this section here that's highlighted now, you must have two of the following: either evidence of a manuscript submitted to a accredited peer-reviewed publication, acknowledging receipt hereof. So just the acknowledgement that you've submitted. Either you can have one of that, two of the four that's displayed now: a published article, published chapter in a research book, conference proceedings that are peer-reviewed, or evidence of manuscript submitted to a DHEAD accredited peer-reviewed publication. So two publications, and you'll see that dependent on the years, there was also requirements for dependent on the years that the students were registered for. Takalani, does that answer your question, or is there something that you would like us to follow up on?
That answers my question. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Dumasani, you okay? And I think I don't see any hands, but it seems like those are that's the only questions in the chat. It's the only questions that are in the chat, and I'm not sure if there are any other questions. But if anything does come to mind after the fact, you are very welcome to contact us in the faculty. I will include a slide with the details of the staff that are going to be responsible for the various qualifications, and you will look on your proof of registration what the qualification code is that you are registered for. So if I go back, for example, just to for the students that don't know where to look for this information, if you look at the image on the top right hand corner, the proof of registration, your qualification, oops, sorry, it skipped, just clicked away from myself. The qualification code is what is on the proof of registration. So when you see, there's going to be a slide that will have the qualification codes and who is responsible in administration that will assist you with administrative matters around the qualification. You can then just contact that person. So your proof of registration will be your guide as to who to contact. If you are unsure of who to contact, you can send an email to me. I have to declare upfront that I have thousands of emails. I mean, my email box is completely crazy most days. So if my responses are very slow, please apologies, but that's why it's best to reach out to the staff that deal with the qualification and who can assist, and also the senior faculty officers, who I will indicate. Tandi is one of the senior faculty officers. At present, we have two other colleagues, that are one that's acting, another colleague that's assisting in an acting position as well, until such time as we have formally appointed to other senior faculty officers. So I'll put that information in a slide before I send it to the postgraduate school. Takalani, I see your hand is up again. Would you like to
Yes.
ask?
Yes, please. I noticed that on Moodle, there's a education course for doctoral students. Is that where all the communication will take place, or is that linked to our supervisors? What is the purpose of that Moodle course? Because
Okay,
it's
I think
actually
the
blank at the moment.
yeah, I think the postgraduate school will have to respond there, because we don't, we don't have access to that platform. We don't post anything there. So that's from the postgraduate school should answer that question. I'm not sure the lady's name that we're talking to from the postgraduate school.
Okay, I will respond to that.
Thanks.
Well, we have our own Moodle community for the doctoral students and the master students. So the education one is not from our side. Ours is the postgraduate Moodle community. So the one you're talking about, I know it, but then it's not from the postgraduate school. I'm not
Okay,
sure
then,
if you are
yeah,
enrolled, Takalani, in any of
yeah.
our Moodle communities. Maybe you can confirm that.
I did send an email request to be enrolled, but I don't know if it actually appears, if any of the courses appear. The only courses I can see under my courses are information literacy and the education thesis, Dean's Office Education.
Okay, I'm not familiar with that place. I'll have to find out from one of our colleagues. Maybe something like that was set up prior, or they in process of doing something like that from the academics domain. I'm not familiar, but I will find out and perhaps just send communication via the postgraduate school to you. But also, students, if you must just keep an eye out for communication that will come from your faculty officer that's responsible for the qualification. I'll ask them to communicate with you any new developments in administration, and of course your supervisor can also engage you if there's something. Maybe it's from the supervisors that they have something in the Moodle platform, because they generally work on that end. We don't, from administration in the faculty, we don't work on the Moodle platform. We might ask them to post information there, but I will ask and find out, and I will get communication through to the students regarding that. Takalani, I would appreciate if you can perhaps just send an email to myself with a print screen, and then we could try and see where that is loaded from. I'm not sure. I'm going to have to do some investigating to find out. I'll put my email address in the chat, please. I would appreciate if you could send me a print screen of what you're seeing, and then we can take it from there if it's not for the postgraduate school. I don't see any other hands, colleagues and students. Anything from administration, colleagues that want to mention something to the students? I know there's very few students in the room, but this is going to be shared in the Moodle platform, and other students will probably be listening to the recording at a later stage. Is there something that you may want to add that may have left out in the presentation? I'm looking at the picture of Harpe now in the group, and I'm just remembering students, something that I did not add, which I think I should add as well to the slides, is once the faculty higher degrees makes a decision, you will receive communication from Lerato Harpe, but it will come from an I'm going to put the email address in the chat, edu FHDC feedback. It will come to you via that email address, and whatever decision they've made. So for example, if your proposal title was noted and approved there, it will come via, if it serves there, it will the decision will come via that email address from Lerato Harpe, and she gives feedback. So what if your results were approved, it will come from there. If your proposal served, it will come from there. Obviously we won't let you know who your assessors are, but whatever information is relevant for you as a student that serves at the faculty higher degrees, the decisions will come from that email address. j.ac.za. I just want to make sure. So you can also keep an eye out for communication from the faculty higher degrees on decisions that were made there based on what your supervisor may have submitted for the agenda. The decisions are also filtered back to students and supervisors via that email address from Lerato Harpe. And then if you want to communicate or find out about the supervisor linked bursaries, I just don't have the email address. If one of the colleagues have that, perhaps if you could put it in the chat as well, please. And Lebo, if you could put the ethics email address for submission of ethics into the chat. We can also include it in a slide, but if you can in the interim put it in the chat, the edu ethics email address for the students to reach out for a proposal template if needed, if they don't get it from their supervisors. Lebo, you'll post it in the chat. Email address,
Yes,
please.
Doctor.
Thank you. Okay, colleagues, I think we're done from our end, and there aren't any hands. So further questions in the chat or any other hands. I don't see anything from academic administration either. Postgraduate school, are you comfortable if we conclude the session?
If I could just ask one last question, Dr.
Sure.
Petka. In terms of a present situation, maybe in a case where a student gets employment opportunities and they want to change their qualification from part-time to full-time or from full-time to part-time during the course of the year, are they allowed to do that?
Yes, they can do that, but if it's close to the end of the study, so we find that some students are registered full-time and they realize like close to the end of the study, I'm not going to be able to finish, then they want to change, but then it's too late. So it's ideal that, as soon as you change your employment and it's not going to impact your, say for example, you are registered 3 years already full time and you get your employment now, then a new employment, and you're almost ready to conclude, you don't need to change your study to part-time because you almost done. If it is that it's quite early in your study or halfway through your study, you have to engage with your supervisor and you can change to part-time if it is that you are needing to slow down your study for reasons that you may find that your employment is going to complicate your life. You won't be able to have more free time to do your work, whatever your studies. You can do that, but of course we look at it on a case-by-case basis. It also depends on how far the student is in their study, in terms of the years that they are registered for. It's not always a given that it will be allowed. We take that also to the Vice Dean for approval. But it is allowed. And the process to follow there is that they communicate with the faculty officer that's dealing with their qualification, as well as with the supervisor, so that we can look at the case and advise the student best. I think we are fine. There's nothing else, it seems. If you're okay, can we conclude the session?
Yes, thank you very much, Dr. Petka, for the presentation, and thank you for honoring our invitation. And if there are no more questions from the students, may I please request that you share the presentation with us so that we can upload on our model community and share with the students who could not join us today. And yes, we can close the session.
Thank you very
If
much.
there are no
We'll
more
do
questions
so.
or comments from the students.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Have a lovely afternoon further and enjoy your weekend. And to our students, we are sure that you are going to be writing all that you need to write and doing all your studies this weekend, because that's when you can fill a lot of time in for your studies. And we look forward to you graduating with us in the coming months or years, dependent on when you started your registration. Take care and good luck with everything that you need to do for your studies. Goodbye.
Bye. Just the final comments to the students. A reminder for you to please complete the feedback survey. I have just placed it on the chat now. Please, before you leave the session, can you kindly complete the feedback survey? And thank you very much. Have a good day further.